Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the people of Beaufort County about the November election that's coming up. Many important things on that ballot. I'm sure many of you out there have your own chosen candidates that you hope are successful, but I think that there's one area in which we can all be successful, that we can all win, and that's in regard to the penny sales tax referendum for certain specific infrastructure projects in Beaufort County. Now, let me first say this. Nobody hates taxes more than I do in the General Assembly. In the 10 years that I've been there, not only have I opposed gas taxes, sales taxes, income taxes, I've led filibusters to delay implementation of such until we get our house in order and start spending more wisely. So I feel like my record in regard to taking money out of people's pockets is fairly well established. And so I can only think of two instances in which I have supported a tax increase. And one was a few years ago in regard to the rural and critical lands referendum. And I think that's critically important because Beaufort County, if we don't do something proactive, is in danger of becoming, what Maryland, where I grew up, happened in around Chesapeake Bay. I mean, the development in the Mid-Atlantic region ruined that particular estuarine system for all time, and to the point now where they're spending hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars to try to clean it up. So we've been very proactive here in Beaufort County in buying up lands in critical watershed areas. I believe the last referendum passed by about 75% of the vote, and I'm very proud of the way Beaufort County residents have stepped up to protect something that's very important to them. So that's the first time I voted for a tax increase. Now, this coming November midterm election will be the second time because I plan to support and would urge you all to consider supporting the penny sales tax for very specific road and bridge projects. Now, there was one proposed a year or so ago that I opposed because the list of projects was really just a grab bag of various things from the north of the Broad, south of the Broad, comprised mostly, I think, to appeal to a broad demographic section. In my judgment, there wasn't really an effort to make sure the projects were strictly needed, and so I opposed it. But the reason that I support this particular referendum that's coming up this time around in regard to the penny sales tax is because it's very narrowly focused and specifically defined. It talks about there being a penny sales tax for a period of 4 years to raise $120 million for three specific things. Once that $120 million is raised, by operation of law, that penny sales tax goes away. It's not like you have to count on members of county council or members of the General Assembly to do away with the tax. It's in the referendum question itself. I mean, look at the referendum question when you go to the ballot box. It will say, shall a penny sales tax be approved for a period of 4 years or the raising of $120 million, whichever comes first, whichever comes earlier, for the following reasons. And then the three reasons are, they're also very specific. First of all, it's $80 million to go toward the replacement of the spans of bridges that connect Hilton Head with the mainland. That's $80 million. $30 million is to go toward relieving traffic congestion on Ladies Island. And I take my daughter to school every day and drive over the Wood Memorial Bridge and go down 21, and I feel like I take my life in my hands every time I drive down that route. So I can tell you that is a critical need as well. And then $10 million for ancillary things like sidewalks and pedestrian accesses and things of that nature, because I think one of the things that makes our county special and unique is that so many places are walkable. So many places, you can leave your home and walk to a store or to a theater or to a shop or some other place. And so we very narrowly defined the $120 million to go to those three specific things. Now, in regard to the Hilton Head bridges, those are state-owned bridges, and I understand the sentiment would be if they're state-owned bridges, why is the state not paying for those bridges itself? And the fact of the matter is this: all capital projects in South Carolina in regard to infrastructure, whether it's roads and bridges or whether it's anything else ancillary to that, is funded through something called the State Infrastructure Bank. The State Infrastructure Bank takes a portion of your gas taxes and then allocates them to local areas to assist with the building of state projects in those areas. a requirement by the State Infrastructure Bank, or it's often called the SIB. They won't give any of that money, they won't award or grant any of those funds unless the local government has a 1/3 match skin in the game. That's just the way the vehicle has been set up. And I recognize that reality. I mean, we're after trying to get a substantial amount of money from the State Infrastructure Bank. And let me tell you what amount we're trying to get in regard to those bridges. The total amount of this project, which comes from Moss Creek over the 4 spans of bridges down to Squire Pope Road, that is projected to cost about $240 million. $40 million we've already set aside and earmarked SCDOT funds, $40 million, to pay and replace the first span as you head on to Hilton Head. The remaining amount of money, the remaining $200 million, we need to come up with somehow, both on a local match and on a state match basis. Now, when I said before, 1/3 of the project has to be locally funded. So 1/3 of the $240 million is $80 million. You take that $40 million that's set aside to replace the first span of the bridge, that knocks it down to $200. You take that $80 million that's going to be raised hopefully through this penny sales tax locally, and that gets down to a $120 million request that the delegation is going to be making to the State Infrastructure Bank. They won't even consider your application unless you designate in there how the local government is going to pay for their 1/3. So it's absolutely critical in order to get $120 million of your money back into this district. A predicate to that is this local match. Now, there's been some discussions about, is this the best way to raise that local match? I mean, of the $80 million, couldn't we do something else? Isn't there some other way to raise the money? And in particular, some have asked me, why can't we go ahead and simply tax the tourists or tax the people that are coming here? And my answer to that is, right now, under state law, the only mechanism to provide that local match is through this local option penny sales tax. There is no other alternate way. The accommodations taxes, they're not designated. You cannot devote them to infrastructure projects like this without changing the law. Now, we could always try to change the law up there, but the need is now. I mean, we need to replace this now, because what's going to happen is this. If we don't approve this penny sales tax, and the DOT and the state of South Carolina sees that we're not willing to go ahead and pay that 1/3 component of the total cost, the DOT is going to proceed to just simply spend the existing $40 million it has set aside to replace that first span, okay? That's going to be a tremendous lost opportunity for us as a community to define what we want that to look like. What do we want that particular span of bridges to look like that connects Hilton Head with the mainland? Do we want bike paths? Do we want walking paths? Do we want to have the power lines somehow hidden so that you don't have that visual, image when you come into Hilton Head of these power lines? We lose an opportunity to really dictate the look and feel of Hilton Head when people come onto the island. And so, to me, it's critically important that we get this particular local match in place for the Hilton Head bridges. If we don't do that, then I'm not sure when we're going to be able to have them replaced, and it's going to be done piecemeal instead of in the comprehensive way that I think serves the people's best interests. Now, shifting gears and going over to Ladies Island, there's simply no other way around solving the problem but to spend more money. And I don't like taxes, and I don't like public spending, but I recognize that roads are public goods. I recognize that bridges are public goods. And the nature of a public good is that since everybody benefits from it, it's very hard to get a private sector partner or a private industry to step in and take care of that public asset. So while I oppose taxes strenuously, I'm not an anarchist, and I recognize that there are instances where tax dollars need to be spent for public goods. And I think that with the nature of the improvements that are needed on Ladies Island to make things safer and more convenient for motorists, and in regard to Hilton Head and the bridges that connect the island with the mainland, I think those are public goods. I think that in order for us to get money that we sent up there and put in an infrastructure bank to prevent that from being spent elsewhere on other projects in the upstate or the Midlands or the PD, I want to get $120 million of that money that we sent up there back into Beaufort County. And we're not going to get that $120 million from the State Infrastructure Bank if we don't have that 1/3 local match of the $240 million that's going to cost to build to replace those Hilton Head bridges. I can't think of a more equitable way to do it than this penny sales tax. Now, there's been projections run, and about half of that penny sales tax will ultimately be borne by visitors, by people coming into the area, and the other half roughly is going to be borne by residents. And it's a lot of money any way you cut it, but to my way of thinking, given the fact that you need that 1/3 match in order to unlock those state dollars and bring them back, this seems to me the most equitable means of having that 1/3 match. And as a practical matter, it is the only legal means available to us right now. And so I really hope that the voters take that into consideration in November, and I really hope that they will vote to approve this specific tax increase for a specific period of time and for a specific purpose, which will then sunset on its own volition without any further action by representatives. So, with that having been said, I'll be happy to answer questions. I understand that there are some other people here that have some views other than mine, and that's fine, of course. I mean, I think one of the things I like about referendums is that it forces you as a public official or as a citizen to go to the people and make the case. You've got to describe why you need the taxes, which is never a popular thing. You've got to describe what it's going to be used for. You've got to describe the alternatives, and you have to do so in a way, in a context where you answer questions and when people challenge it. So I think it's great today that my good friend Laura Sterling is going to be here talking a little bit about the other side of the coin, because in any issue, regardless of what that issue is, there's always going to be another side to it. And I know in today's politics we tend to think of we're right and the other side is wrong, but good public policy comes out of discussion reasonably between opposing sides. And